All right, y'all. I go by the name Brian Discerning Thoughts, and I want to speak about Charlie Kirk's death. Charlie Kirk's death is pretty much everywhere. It's all over the news. It's all over the internet, and it's one of the most disturbing things that I've seen in recent times. But I don't want to speak about Charlie Kirk's death in a way that's mocking him, in a way that's disrespecting anything with his views, some of the things that he's done in his past. That's a whole different video. This video right here talks about what Charlie Kirk's his death, what it represents, not only for the right, not only for the left, but just in society, specifically America, how we're going towards a dangerous path. Okay, so Charlie Kirk's death is more than a tragedy because it's actually a turning point. For the first time in recent memory, conservatives have their own martyr. And that changes everything because now you can say they can say that they have their own version of Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. This is not comparing him to those, but prior to him, who did they really have? Like for decades, the left has had victims whose death they became like rallying cries, right? You had Emmett Till, Heather Heyer, George Floyd. Their names became like shorthand for justice, specifically for those who are like on the humanitarian side of freedom of speech, right? Or on the left of freedom of speech. But conservatives on the other end, like the other end, typically what I'm talking about, the Bull Connors of society, the extreme right, they haven't really had anybody that was a somebody that kind of died behind their beliefs prior to Charlie Kirk, who was on the same level as Charlie Kirk, right? So for before Charlie Kirk, they kind of leaned on symbols like the Robert E. Lee statues. You would hear these stories where they would say, "Oh, they're trying to make us give up our statues and our history." So prior to Charlie Kirk's death, it was like Robert E. Lee statue, cancel culture, kind of what we saw with the whole Hulk Hogan thing that recently happened, where he passed away due to a heart attack, and a lot of people who came out supporting, like showing like paying their respects to Hulk Hogan, kind of got revealed, and they were like, "Hey, man, just giving condolences," and they got backlash because they're like, "How are you a fan of this guy? Or how are you paying condolences to him when he did this or he did that?" So a lot of people on the right were saying, man, we lost icons on our side due to cancel culture, meaning like these people were they had careers, whatever, whether it's Roseanne Barr, whether it's Dog the Bounty Hunter, or whoever it is on the right, and they lost their job, they lost their earning potential based on their beliefs. So now with Charlie Kirk, that gap is filled. He becomes a martyr who confirms the conservative narrative that their side is persecuted. It's their attack for what they believe. Prior to that, it seemed like it was only, the narrative has only been one-sided. So let's talk about Charlie Kirk's reach and his legacy, right? Charlie Kirk, he was not a one of these fringe voices. All right, he had millions of followers, right? And then when on top of those millions of followers, I believe his followers were even bigger than that, because his followers, a lot of his followers, or people that followed him, didn't necessarily follow him online because maybe they're afraid to follow him because they agree with him, and somebody that follows them are looking at who they follow. So a lot of people may have agreed with Charlie Kirk, but they never necessarily followed him or wanted to like any of his posts despite agreeing with him because of the stigma that came along with sharing some of the same views that Charlie Kirk had. But he had millions of followers online, and he built Turning Point USA into one of the largest conservative youth organizations in the country. From his teenage years up to his death, his influence only grew. He wasn't just talking politics. He was shaping a whole generation's worldview. And that's what makes his death so significant. It's not just symbolic, but it resonates with a huge swath of young conservative who saw him like as that was their voice, right? That this was somebody that they saw that was speaking the language that they wanted to hear. It wasn't somebody that was telling them they were wrong for whatever beliefs or they should kind of conform to whatever the popular beliefs are. He was speaking on behalf of them, for them. So in a sense, they saw him as a reflection of themselves, right? So after his death, what happened was something very, very revealing, because people that you thought of as ordinary co-workers, like neighbors, some of the people that you follow online, some of the affable or gregarious types at work, meaning the talk loving, sweet people, right? They started posting condolences, right? And like kind of showing their reverence or their admiration for him, saying, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. And you would see the picture of his birthday and the date that he passed away. And in doing so, the ones that I told you that may have followed him but didn't hit the follow button, but kind of indirectly was, shadowing his work and liking with the stuff that he was saying, they kind of removed the veil and they showed how wide Kirk's influence really was, right? For some, it wasn't just about mourning him. It was like, damn, I kind of saw myself in him and I kind of respected what he did. So they was like they were aligning themselves with a lot of the stuff that he was saying, a lot of the rhetoric that he was saying. I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm just talking about what his death represents. So I would like to say that this is kind of precisely where the Democrats, this is where they failed, right? They failed because they never really figured out how to captivate the youth the way that the conservatives did. See, when I was coming up, around the time that Obama got elected, the Democrats had control over the youth, and the conservatives was seen as the older party, right? This was a party that was the older party. But conservatives somehow flipped that. They reversed that. They became the voice of the youth, right? They became the voice of the youth, the people who felt like their voice wasn't heard, that they felt like they were silenced, they felt like they were being replaced. And that's precisely where Charlie Kirk came in to kind of speak on behalf of those people. So Charlie Kirk spoke directly to young conservatives, especially young white boys, right? In a way that made them feel part of something way bigger. So his rhetoric, right? His rhetoric, whether you agreed with it or not, it radicalized many of them. And now that he's gone, his death risks radicalizing. It risks radicalizing them even further. So, we get into how radicalization could turn into retaliation. And some could argue, like a lot of the rhetoric that he was talking about could have influenced a lot of the domestic terrorism that was happening in the United States, right? So keep this in mind. For those already influenced by his message, martyrdom is like rocket fuel, right? It's like some of these kids who listened to his message and saw themselves in him or as a reflection of them, they may feel like they have to go out and avenge his death. This is what his death ultimately represents, because with martyrdom, you have some who feel like, I have to get into the action part. Like, I'm tired of typing. I'm tired of tweeting. I'm tired of making these videos. It's time for me to stop watching the videos and actively go out here and get to the action part. So this creates a dangerous precedent, because now left-leaning politicians and activists, social media activists, they could become targets of that radical energy. And see, when one side embraces violence and the other side may feel compelled to respond in kind, whether it's their fault or not, that cycle, it pushes both left and right into believing that political violence is the answer. So it's anytime you see the death of somebody who is a firebrand or outspoken, such as a Charlie Kirk, political violence isn't really the answer, because the violence could go either way, right? And now, because of that, there may be ramifications of a backlash happening. So keep in mind, I want to bring up some history before I go. This really isn't new in America. You know, if you go back to the era of slave revolts, right? Because most people say that we never revolted. There was over hundreds of slave revolts, right? The only one that recently has been talked about is Nat Turner, right? But back in the day, during the slave revolts, every time enslaved people, they rose up and violence, every time they rose up and fought out against the person that captured them, violence, it was unleashed. Not just on the people who rebelled, but also on innocent black people who had nothing to do with the revolt. So keep that in mind, right? So fear kind of became the main driver of the system, because in order to survive, some even engaged in what was called meritorious manumission, meaning you gain your freedom by kind of betraying your own and selling out other people in order to avoid the lash of that collective punishment, or to get extra rations of food, right? And this is what reminds us that the history of political violence, it's a double-edged sword in a way, because it punishes the guilty and the innocent. It punishes us both, right? Whether you're guilty or innocent, it punishes us both. And the fear that makes people align themselves with power, even the fear that makes these people align themselves with power, they do it because of fear, even when they don't truly believe in it. They align themselves with power because of that fear of retaliation. This is what you would see in Stalin's Russia, and this is what you would see even happening abroad over there in, I believe, in North Korea, right? Where people have the fear as the main driver. And you don't want America to kind of become another version of that. So that's why Charlie Kirk's death is so unique, because it didn't silence his voice. It only amplified it. You even heard Trump saying this. Conservatives now have their martyr, someone they can enshrine as proof that their beliefs make them persecuted. But martyrdom, it doesn't just inspire sympathy. It inspires retaliation. That's the action that I was talking about. And if both left and right begin to see violence as the path forward, then we're not moving ahead as a country. We're stepping backward into something darker, something far more sinister. So this is what his death ultimately represents. So we have to be careful and look at the entire picture. It's not about his politics or what he said. This is just what his death represents. Looking at history. So if you like what I said and you got to the end of this video, type stop sign at the bottom. It's Brian Discerning Thoughts, and I'm out. Peace.